Welcome back to your channel. Before we begin our journey, we'd love to get to know our wonderful family around the world. Let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. Thank you, enjoy the show, and let us know if you like the story. The heavy oak doors of the Great Hall in the Kingdom of Ethelgard were barred shut, sealing in the heat of 1,000 beeswax candles and the suffocating scent of roasted boar and spiced wine. Inside, the cacophony of the wedding feast was a physical weight, a wall of sound that pressed against the temples of Princess Alara. She sat at the high table, a statue draped in ivory silk and suffocating velvet, the heavy ancestral crown of her new husband's lineage digging into her brow. King Thorn, a man whose laughter sounded like grinding stones and whose hands were always cold, sat beside her, already drunk on victory. He was not just celebrating a marriage, he was celebrating the annexation of her father's lands. Alara was not a bride. She was a treaty signed in flesh and blood, a decorative object to be placed on a shelf until she produced an heir. The music swelled, a bawdy tune that made the lords pound the tables, but Alara heard only the rushing of her own blood. She looked at her hands, resting pale and trembling on the embroidered tablecloth. If she stayed, she would die. Perhaps not instantly, but slowly, eroding day by day, until the woman she was ceased to exist, replaced entirely by the queen she was forced to be. The realization was not a sudden spark, but a cold, hard stone settling in her stomach. She leaned over to Thorn, whispering a plea about the heat and a need for fresh air. He waved a dismissive hand, his eyes glazed and focused on a serving girl refilling his goblet. It was the only permission she needed. Alara rose with the grace drilled into her since birth, moving through the revelry like a ghost. She offered tight, polite smiles to the drunken nobles who toasted her, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She slipped through the side door into the shadowed corridor of the servants' wing, the noise of the feast instantly muffled, replaced by the chill draft of the stone castle. She did not stop to think. Thinking would bring terror. She moved on instinct. She ran toward the scullery, her heavy skirts tangling around her legs, the intricate beading catching on rough stone. In the laundry room, she found what she needed: a rough woolen cloak stained with soot, and a pair of oversized leather boots left by a stable hand. She tore at the laces of her wedding gown, the silk ripping with a sound that felt violently satisfying. She stepped out of the ivory prison, leaving it in a heap on the flagstones, a shed skin of a life she was discarding. Shivering in her thin camise, she pulled the scratchy wool cloak tight around her, shoving her delicate feet into the coarse boots. She rubbed ash from the hearth over her face and neck, masking the porcelain complexion that marked her as royalty. Then she opened the heavy wooden door that led to the delivery courtyard and stepped into the night. The air outside was biting, carrying the smell of upcoming snow. The moon was obscured by thick, bruising clouds, granting her the mercy of darkness. Alara did not take a horse would be missed, and a woman riding alone was a beacon for trouble. Instead, she scrambled over the low wall near the pigsties, dropping into the muddy ditch on the other side. The impact jarred her teeth, and the muck soaked instantly through the boots, but she scrambled up the bank and ran toward the tree line of the Whispering Woods. For 3 days and 3 nights, the forest was a purgatory of brambles and shadows. Alara moved with the desperation of prey. Every snapping twig sounded like the pursuit of Thorn's blackguard. She slept in hollowed-out logs and under shelves of rock, shivering violently, her stomach a cramping knot of hunger. The physical suffering was acute, yet there was a strange, delirious clarity to it. For the first time in her life, her pain was her own. It was not dictated by protocol or etiquette. It was the raw, honest consequence of her own choices. She ate tart berries that numbed her tongue and drank from icy streams. Her hands, once accustomed only to holding embroidery needles, now plunged into freezing mud to keep her balance. By the fourth day, she reached the edge of the woods and found herself overlooking the sprawling, smog-choked valley of Oak Haven's industrial borders. Here, the world was gray and brown, smelling of coal smoke and unwashed bodies. She stumbled onto a dirt road, keeping her head down, the hood of her cloak pulled low. She was no longer Princess Alara. She was a specter, a beggar, a nothing. She reached a settlement known as Iron Ridge, a place of blacksmiths and tanners where the fires burned hot day and night. Exhaustion finally claimed her near a watering trough outside a grimy tavern. She collapsed, the world spinning into darkness. When she awoke, the smell of burning coal was overwhelming. She was lying on a pile of straw in a corner of a workshop, the heat from a nearby forge warming her chilled bones. A man stood by the anvil, his back to her. He was immense, his shoulders broad and corded with muscle, hammering a piece of glowing red steel with rhythmic, deafening strikes. Alara sat up, gasping as pain shot through her stiff limbs. The hammering stopped. The man turned. He had a face etched with scars and a beard specifically grown to hide them. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and entirely unimpressed. "You're awake," he said, his voice like gravel. "You scream in your sleep. Something about a crown." Alara froze, her hand flying to her throat. "Where am I?" "My forge. Found you in the mud. You looked dead. You're not, unfortunately, for my larder." He gestured to a wooden bowl on a stool. "Eat, then leave." Alara devoured the pottage, a thick, tasteless mush of oats and turnips, as if it were a royal banquet. The man, whose name she learned was Silas, watched her with narrowed eyes. He saw the way she held the spoon, the delicate arch of her neck, the way she wiped her mouth. "You're running from something bad," Silas stated flatly, returning to his work. "And you've never done a day's work in your life." "I can work," Alara lied, her voice raspy. Silas snorted. "Look at your hands, soft as butter. You're highborn, a merchant's daughter who didn't like her betrothal, or maybe a lady-in-waiting in trouble." He paused, looking at her intently. "Or something higher," Alara stuttered, swaying slightly. "I am no one, and I need to stay, just for a few days. I can pay you, eventually. I don't need coin. I need hands. Can you work the bellows? Can you haul coal? Can you scrub soot until your fingers bleed?" "Yes," she said, though she had no idea if she could. And so, the princess became the apprentice. The first week was a torture she had never imagined existed. Her hands blistered and bled, then blistered again. Her back ached with a constant, throbbing dullness. Silas was a hard taskmaster, speaking little and praising less. But he did not turn her out, and he did not ask questions. He seemed to understand the sanctuary of silence. Alara learned to feed the fire, to judge the heat of the metal by its color, to sharpen blades on the grinding wheel until sparks flew like captured stars. She cut her long, golden hair with a pair of sheep shears, leaving it jagged and short, rubbing coal dust into the strands to darken them. Weeks turned into a month. The news from the capital trickled into Iron Ridge slowly. King Thorn was in a rage. A reward was posted for the abducted queen, claiming she had been taken by rebels. The lie made Alara smile grimly as she hauled a bucket of water from the well. He could not admit she had run. His ego would not allow it. One evening, as the winter snows began to settle thick on the thatched roofs, the tavern door across the street burst open. 4 men in the livery of the Black Guard strode out, their armor clanking. Alara, sweeping the front step of the forge, felt her blood turn to ice. She ducked inside, her heart hammering, just as it had on her wedding night. "Silas," she hissed. The blacksmith looked up from his work, Seeing the terror in her eyes, he didn't need to ask. He grabbed a heavy smudge pot of grease and soot and smeared it across her face, obscuring her features completely. Get to the bellows. Pump until the fire roars. Don't look up. Moments later, the heavy boots of the soldiers crunched on the gravel of the workshop floor. Blacksmith, the captain barked. We seek a woman. Fair hair, blue eyes. A runaway. Silas didn't stop hammering. I see many women. Most run away from me, he grunted, not looking up. The captain stepped closer, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. This is a royal matter. Check your memory, old man. I have an apprentice, Silas said, gesturing vaguely with his hammer toward the figure shrouded in smoke and shadow at the back. A boy, mute, useless, but cheap. Elara kept her head down, pumping the bellows with a rhythmic, desperate strength. The fire roared, sending a wave of heat and sparks toward the soldiers. The captain recoiled, waving his hand in front of his face. Filthy place, the captain sneered. He cast a cursory glance at the soot-covered figure in the back, a figure with jagged, dark hair, dressed in oversized rags, hunched over manual labor. He saw nothing of the delicate princess in the ivory silk. Let's go. She wouldn't be in a pit like this. When they left, Elara collapsed against the stone wall, sliding down until she hit the floor. She was shaking. Silas set down his hammer and looked at her. For the first time, his expression was soft. You can't stay here, Elle, he said, using the name she had given him. They will come back. They will search every house eventually. I have nowhere to go, she whispered. You have everywhere to go, Silas corrected. You just need to know how to get there. He went to a loose stone in the floor and pried it up, pulling out a small leather pouch. He tossed it to her. It clinked with coin. This isn't charity. You earned this. You work hard. Elara looked at the pouch, then at her hands. They were stained permanently gray, calloused, scarred, and strong. They were the hands of a survivor. Go to the coast, Silas instructed, to the free cities of the east. Thorn's reach does not extend across the sea. There, a woman can be whatever she makes herself. The departure was quiet. There were no tears, only a solemn nod between two people who had saved each other in different ways. Elara left Iron Ridge before dawn, walking out into the snow. But she did not walk with the hurried, frantic steps of a fugitive. She walked with the long, steady stride of a traveler. The journey to the coast took 2 months. Elara traveled with a caravan of wool merchants, earning her keep by mending wagons and tending to the horses. She listened to the stories of the common folk, stories of high taxes, of sons lost to Thorn's wars, of a hunger that never ended. She realized that her life in the palace had been a blindfold. She had been raised to rule a people she did not know. Now she was one of them. When she finally reached the port city of Maris, the smell of salt and fish was the sweetest perfume she had ever encountered. The sea stretched out before her, vast and indifferent, a blue horizon that promised nothing but what she could take from it. She stood on the docks, watching a ship being loaded with timber. Looking for passage? A voice called out. It was the ship's quartermaster, a weather-beaten woman with a pipe clamped between her teeth. I am, Elara said. We don't take passengers, only crew. Can you tie a knot? Can you cook? Can you fight? Elara looked at the woman, then at the ship. She thought of the heavy crown, the suffocating dress, the fear in the woods, the heat of the forge. She reached into her cloak and pulled out a small dagger she had forged herself under Silas's watch, rough but sharp and true. I can work, Elara said, her voice steady and deep, carrying the steel of the forge. And I can learn. The woman grinned. Welcome aboard the sea's mercy, then. What do we call you? Elara looked back toward the land, toward the distant mountains where a king sat on a throne searching for a ghost. That girl was dead. She had died in the snow, in the mud, in the fire. Elle, she said. Just Elle. As the ship cast off, the wind filling the sails with a sharp snap, Alara stood at the stern. She watched the kingdom of Aethelgard shrink into a gray smudge on the horizon. She felt a phantom weight lift from her brow, the final ghost of the crown dissipating into the sea spray. She was not a queen. She was not a wife. She was not a piece of property. She was Elle, a woman with calloused hands and a free soul, sailing into a future that was entirely, terrifyingly, wonderfully her own. The wedding night was a lifetime ago. The morning had finally come. Welcome back to your channel. Before we begin our journey, we'd love to get to know our wonderful family around the world. Let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. Thank you, enjoy the show, and let us know if you like the story.